I've been a huge fan of Death Stranding since it launched. In fact, I earned 2 platinum trophies, one for the PlayStation 4 version and another for the PlayStation 5 Director's Cut, and I absolutely loved every moment of the game. My expectations for the sequel are quite sky high, and I simply cannot wait to dive into Death Stranding 2. And as such, Kojima Productions recently hosted that what has many writers called it some sort of like a Death Stranding boot camp, a small group of journalists spending 4 days at the studio's headquarters, and during the time each attendee played an astonishing 30 hours of Death Stranding 2. Insane. The length of early access is almost unheard of, so long in fact that it might be the longest preview build ever granted for a game. Now if too much preview time is ever possible, Hideo Kojima seems determined to reach it. He's always tries things out to the extent that it's very out of the ordinary. And you know what? I respect that. And despite all the playtime, no one was allowed to record their own clips, and instead everyone's previews rely on the same 5 or about to 10 minutes of Sony supplied footage. And so far all we have to form our impressions are these shared clips plus the write-ups and videos from the bootcamp attendees. Still, even from the limited footage, a number of clear themes did stand out, and I wanted to go through them. Now, as you may have already noticed, I'm a little bit late to this conversation. It's due to that I actually was away for almost a week, 4 days specifically. I've been in Tunis, that's like in north of Africa, so I had my videos scheduled for the time while I was away, and I missed out on this big news because I definitely want to touch on this. So almost every previewer mentioned Metal Gear word, right? There's just been a mention regarding this. Just basically, it's what is going on in the Death Stranding 2. And that's actually because Death Stranding 2 seems to add a lot more stealth and combat than the first game. And this time you'll be finding kind of these bandit camps all over the map. Many missions send Sam in to infiltrate them, these sorts of camps, rather than simply racing past them as you did in the first Death Stranding. Actually there was an extra mention that there was a reason not to explore these bandit camps, and instead in this sequel that at least I've heard about it, well, it actually encourages you to face them, but it really is up to you to decide the decision of which way you want to go about it. Go stealthy, go loud, like mentioned, it's all up to you. And also what makes things interesting is the way you'll be facing mules, right? These bandit camps, these enemies. And those old cargo detecting tripwires appear to be gone. Anytime when you approach in the vicinity of these camps, there will be a tripwire, right? And the enemies will know of your precise location, unless of course if you counteract that. And instead, each camp in Death Stranding 2 now has at least kind of like works more of a base in Metal Gear Solid 5. And now you can just scout from the distance, approach from any sort of angles, and choose either aggressive or, like mentioned, sneakier tactics. And actually, new things that have been mentioned regarding of the new gadgets is a little slow kind of stop motion puppet that rides on Sam's hip. Basically, it works like an eagle in the Assassin's Creed, as a little bit of a mentions, scouting ahead to reveal enemy positions, and there's just a surprising twist. You can actually take Sam's backpack off between the deliveries, and that kind of just lets you focus on the solo side jobs. Just like, well, Solid Snake dropping his rucksack to slip in and out of the enemy bases. An extra tidbit of information regarding it, what makes it kind of interesting. If you played the first game, you know about the weather tower, I believe that's the name of it. Now they're making a return in Death Stranding 2, but this time you can actually use these towers for scouting out ahead. So you can build one nearby these bandit camps and use it, spot enemies, and that can be a major advantage for you. Because initially they were kind of useless, at least in Death Stranding 1, those towers that lets you seeing from the distance. I believe they're not actually called weather towers, I believe they're just called towers. But yeah, nevertheless, they were kind of useless in Death Stranding 1. In this case, in Death Stranding 2, well, at least they seem to be more viable choice. And of course, until the recent previews, we only knew Death Stranding 2 would kind of be visiting Mexico. This is an interesting fact. It's actually quite big as well. well. And now that we learned that most of the game takes place in Australia, from what we have also seen, Kojima's Australia feels more like a stylized game world than, of course, the real geography. And for an example, you might spot a snowy mountain right in the middle of the dry red landscape, which makes kind of interesting how does that even work, but nevertheless we are talking about a game. And so far we know that the sequel has at least 2 big maps, one of course set in Mexico and another in Australia. There could be a 3rd map, presumably, but no previews have shown it yet, and at least has not been mentioned either. Kojima's world building seems less tied to real countries and more focused on striking visuals and varied of environments. Now, in the first Death Stranding, some of the most tense moments came from Sam crept past kind of like invisible BTs while holding his breath. Now, often you weren't sure if they were too close or if you need to be kind of frozen and listen for the movement. You know, the sense of terror made each crossing feel dramatic, but it also kind of got a little bit frustrating, and in fact, a lot of people just completely ignored them and just ran past by them. In Death Stranding 2 appears to be toned, just at least it's to some extent toned down. The BTs doesn't seem to be, well, invisible. In all the footages that they kind of like tinted blue, making them easier to see from a distance, and multiple writers noted this change, saying it could take some of the fear out of the BT encounters. And on the plus side though, you can also get a new blood boomerang weapon. Perhaps this is kind of like a nod to an Australian rugged wildlife. It's an interesting fact. Now, many previews praised the sequel more urgent pacing. Now, in the first game, if you guys know it, the best features like vehicles and road building only unlocked after you reached the second big map. Some players found the opening hours just too damn slow, even if they enjoyed the quiet build-up. And in Death Stranding 2, you dive into delivering work and open world tools far sooner. Now, there's been a report that after completing the first delivery mission within about 20 minutes of gameplay, from there the sequel moves quickly into the sandbox features that fans love. And man, that's gonna be exciting. And also, beyond more of those stealths and faster pacing, previewers highlighted a long list of both new tools and returning favorites, such as the camouflage gear. Just basically Sam can now wear outfits that help him blend into different terrains, boosting his stealth. Skill tree, a new progression system, lets you improve Sam's strength, speed, stealth, and other abilities over the time. Shooting on the move, you can fire guns from certain vehicles, making highway combat more dynamic. Customizable trucks, big rigs can be fitted with attachments like scoping arm that grabs stray cargo or an auto turret to fend off the bandits. I really like these features. There's also a day-night cycle. Yeah, time passes in the world, bringing different challenges and lighting conditions. And there's a little extra mention, an otter hat, I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's just basically a beloved hat that lets Sam float down the river in peace and back, and so you can drift along the water without a worry. If you know it, you know it. Mega ladders, 2 ladders can be linked together to reach higher ledges, opening new routes throughout the terrain. I love this feature. Roads, ziplines, and monorails. In addition to the returning of the roads and ziplines, now you can build a monorail rails. Wow. These carry materials, and Sam himself in fact, from the mines to facilities, creating a durable network across large distances. It's basically a train, a very long expressway train, and you go through a whole map, whole distances, and carrying all the material and things that you just pretty much cannot carry yourself or even in a truck. There's also an in-game glossary, basically a new feature that basically lets you point at almost anything in the world and read a short description. This kind of replaces the old system of long emails in Sam's inbox and helps you learn about tools, creatures, and the kind of technology without skipping the gameplay. You know, from the shared footage and early hands-on articles, Death Stranding 2 looks like a bolder, more flexible sequel. It keeps the core of delivering packages across a strange post-apocalyptic world, but it layers on a deeper stealth, more combat options, and a richer mix of tools. The shift to Australia as the prime setting brings fresh scenery, while the faster pace means you'll get to the fun part sooner. Better BT visibility and scouting gadgets ease the tension for the newcomers, while die-hard fans can still find complex new challenges in abandoned camps and monorail networks. All told, the preview's build suggests Kojima's Productions has taken the lessons of the first game, both its triumphs and its missteps, and shaped the experience that's leaner, more varied, and just as dreamlike as ever. Whether you're sneaking into an abandoned stronghold, riding on a truck with a custom turret, or floating peacefully down the river, Death Stranding 2 looks set to push the envelope of what an open world adventure can feel like, and coming sooner rather than later, in June, oh man, I personally cannot wait. Thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe, I'll see you guys all, and have a wonderful day.